welcome to Connect to Success with me, Ashley Owens on RVNTV, 12:30 on Thursdays during your lunch break. I have the pleasure and the absolute privilege today to interview my very first client ever, Marty McDonald. Right. So I owe you a lot of things. So yeah, every time we chat, it's always about Marty. Just want to let you know. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, buddy.
Thank you, Ashley. But you did it. I mean, I helped you and I hired you,
yes.
But you did it. So I can't take all the credit.
You can kind of take a little bit of it.
Okay.
I think you should just roll with it because you're going to get gifts every single holiday. So,
there you go.
Yeah, every year I'm in business, I'm like, thank you very much. Here's your gift for today.
Well, you're welcome.
So I am thrilled to have you here. Again, I'm surprised it took this long to get you here, but your company, Bad Rhino, has such an awesome name. So I would love people to know more about you, how Bad Rhino started, because I know it's an interesting concept between you and your buddy, right? And,
well, yeah. So my business
that.
partner, Rich, I mean, him and I started the company. He came up with the name. So that's where everybody starts. It's like, how did you come up with Bad Rhino? Right. Well, we could have called it like, Rich and Marty's marketing,
marvelous
but that
adventure.
or something like that. Yeah, it is a marvelous adventure when you think about it. But at the same time, we wanted something that would stick. And Rich is an awesome business partner for me because I can think long term and I can get day-to-day things done. But for him, he's very well organized. He keeps everything focused.
Right.
So when he came with the idea of going out on his own, he was looking for help. And that's how it started, was he knew I had done some of this work and continued to do some of this work at the time, now 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So we're actually entering in year 9 right now, which is,
jeez,
yeah, I know. Yeah.
What are you gonna do for your 10-year?
I have no idea yet. We'll get
have
through
like
9 first. Yeah. But he came to me and said, hey, I want some help. Would you be willing to help? And I said, you know what, Rich? And I was super busy at the time. And him being well thought out, I was like, I know he's going to take his time in thinking of a name. So in my head, I was like, Rich, if you come up with a name and I like the name, let's roll with it. So I thought it'd be like 2 weeks down the road. It was really about 45 minutes. He came into my office, erased my whiteboard, wrote 12 names down there, and 2 of them I can really remember. Obviously, the one was Bad Rhino, and the other one was Moosehorn, which we scrapped. And we went from there, and we've been going ever since.
And so how have you taken the name Bad Rhino and utilized that as your message for your company?
So 2 reasons. The one reason I loved it when Rich came up with it, I was like, no, this is different. I said, but we have to figure out what we want to do, right? To your point in the question is, do you want to have a name Bad Rhino? You got to be able to back it up.
Yeah.
That was number 1. So that was a big piece of like, how do we want to feel? So the hard charging kind of thing is like, let's not take a laid back approach. Let's attack this, so to speak, kind of head down charging. The other aspect of it was we do work with corporate clients and we have large names that we've worked with, but whenever, that stuffy feeling just being in like a corporate environment, I wanted that person to go through and make sure that they understood who we are, right? So if you put a name Bad Rhino and you have to get a purchase order for it, you got to think twice and you have to trust us that we're going to do the job, that we're going to be there. Plus, everyone asks about the name. So it kept that whole theme going of being a little bit different.
So with that theme, what is it that your company does that makes you keep your head down and charge and execute?
Sure. So essentially we're a marketing agency. We're a social focused marketing agency. So we lead with social media. Now, 8-9 years ago, that meant something totally different, and we have evolved. So we lead with social media, the strategy, the execution, running all the ads, creating content, following up, doing all the reputation management that goes along with that. But we also morphed into a full service digital agency with partners, but we still are a social focused agency.
So that social focused agency, I mean, you've been around for 9-10 years. Obviously social media has changed significantly, even in just the past 2. So what, in a very heavily saturated market with everybody saying that they're a social media strategist to a subject matter expert in the field, and typically they're one-man bands. How are you changing the game, and how are you taking your business and making it stand out as that go-to company for social media strategy? Sure.
No, it's a great question because a lot of things that we do, we want to focus in on transparency. So yes, there's a lot of competition, there's strategists out there, there's other people that say they can do it. Our background has been on doing both sides of it. Not only the strategy, but the execution of it, and also sharing and collaborating with all of our clients, both large and small, in being able to do that. So we want to get their input because we have to capture their voice. It doesn't help if they just do, oh, Marty, that's awesome, and it sounds really good, but it doesn't match all their other marketing. that's going to be, a miscommunication in a marketing terms, just going to fall apart. And we don't want to do that. So the transparency is the biggest thing that we do to set ourselves apart. The other side of it is all the changes that have come along. We're just 100% honest with our clients. It's cost us some deals early on, i.e., we'll tell them, hey, your website's not any good. We don't want to drive traffic there. You might have to change your branding. You might have to change some of the things, but we want them to succeed. And that's been the biggest thing where we've seen long-term client relationships, like you said, 8, 9, 10 years. Going on those, going 9, almost into 10 in a year, thinking in those terms, the long-term relationships have always built on transparency.
Right, and that transparency I think is so important specifically within any kind of business, especially when you're trying to run a social media campaign, but also trying to collaborate with the branding aspect of it. So with that being said though, how are you working with the marketing department of the companies to be able to make sure the message is consistent? Yeah,
we have to work with, sometimes it's a business owner and then sometimes they have an entire team. So we work with both to make sure it stays consistent.
Okay, and so what has been the biggest challenge social media wise that you have been able to kind of face and then overcome just because of all the changes in the past few years?
Sure, so the first phase of it is that strategy and making sure that you're working directly in all their other marketing pieces, working with the owner or working with the marketing teams. But the changes come fast and furious. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, they all change things in their algorithms. Feels like daily, it's more about weekly and monthly, but it almost feels daily and hourly. So you wanna stay focused in there, especially when you're managing large budgets and ad spend, because that's the one big change.
Yeah.
It has been a pay-to-play thing now, whereas you don't get as much organic reach. So if you don't stay on top of it, that's the challenge. And that requires constant communication through those teams that we can throttle those ads up or down depending on the day and how the content's responding with their audience.
Well, it seems like you're super knowledgeable about that, which is why you've been in business for 9 to 10 years. So when we return, we're going to talk to you about how that growth has been exponentially kind of pushed because of Marty's networking skills. So stay tuned with his tactical tips and practical takeaways. And welcome back to Connect to Success with Ashley Owens on RVNTV, where we talk to the best power networkers in the greater Philadelphia and South Jersey area. And today, again, as you had seen from the first segment, I have Marty McDonald from Bad Rhino today. So Marty, we had talked about in the very first half about Bad Rhino, about your messaging. And I think, again, it's so important to be able to have a business that knows what they're doing, number one, that's working with the trends and working with the culture and how just how people are digesting content. So with that being said, I do want to ask you a few things about networking, but the one question I want to ask you is, what is the biggest change that has been over the past, let's say, 2 years in social media that can be a good lessons learned for people if they're branding themselves and using networking as a tool? Or excuse me, using social media as a tool.
Using social media. Yeah. So I think online networking is huge. So I think there's two things. One, you have a professional persona that you have out there. So in Facebook terms, that would be your business page, right? And then secondary is you have your personal page. And you can intertwine the two. It's all personal preference. But the nice part about having a business page is you can run ads to it. So if you went to an event, say, and you're at an event and you wanted to make sure that you connected with everybody that was there, maybe you do an ad that's just targeting people that were at the restaurant that you had the event at. Yeah. Okay. So that's a little bit higher level, and you want to have like a larger community or larger following. A very simple way is on your business card, just simply have that you have a business page and get people to go there and then produce your content there, whether it's videos like this or you have a Facebook Live that you do every once in a while, and invite them to it. Even on the back of your card, say, hey, I do a Facebook Live or I publish a blog post every Tuesday, and be consistent with that. And that's one of the neatest things for networking purposes. You can go meet somebody personally on, say, a Thursday night, and then maybe you are interested in their services, and by Tuesday you can get a really good feel because every Tuesday they publish a blog or they do a Facebook Live. So now you're seeing them in action.
You can see the credibility attached to it. That's incredible. So All right, so for example, if there is a power networker, well, you know, let me go off of this. I had met somebody recently who is in the process of building up their own executive assistant branch.
Okay.
And they are trying to figure out a way to build an audience. What would the top 3 things, and we can actually kind of cater that into networking, what would the top 3 things that you would at least suggest just to get started with somebody who has a personal page, but that company page ends up being a good addition, but what's the best way social media wise to get started on building your audience?
Sure, so they're doing executive assistant work for clients?
Correct,
Okay.
yeah, so kind of think of a virtual assistant. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So the first thing you do is talk about the benefits of being, having a virtual assistant. It doesn't mean that person individually, but just the generic things like saves you time, can save you money, and illustrate how that will do so. So create content around that, show the value in having that service. The second thing is having a little bit of a consistent brand to whatever it is, in this case, executive assistant. And what I mean by that is just having the professional things. Even if it's a simple website, make sure it looks professional. Make sure that you have headshots or anything else that graphically is done, and spend a little bit of money, not try and do it yourself, because it's the first impression that's going to make a very big thing. And then after you have those 2 things kind of running, the third thing is to introduce yourself and be real. So if you can create content doing video, then do video. If you can create content doing, you know, you're better at writing or podcast because you don't want to be on video, then do it that way. But start to introduce yourself and have it as an extension of your business card and your website.
So what do you think the biggest mistake people make when they go out, let's say on their own, and they start branding themselves and they don't use somebody like you? What would the biggest mistake that you see a lot of people come to you that are very reactive rather than being proactive?
Sure, they only rely on organic content. That's probably the biggest thing is.
So explain what that means.
Sure, so organic content is things that you post out there that you hope people will see. If you put paid advertising behind it, you're targeting the folks that you want to see. That's the simplest way to, put that in play. So what you want to be able to do is have a mix. So over time, you don't want to have all paid, but you also don't want to have all organic content. People think that if they just put it up there, people are going to see it. But you can almost guarantee it, and I said almost guarantee it, if you put some advertising dollars behind it. So the first stage is building a little bit of an audience, so get everybody from your personal page or friends and family over to that business page so that you can start running advertising too.
And your services range from small business to corporate, correct?
Oh yeah.
So within those packages, and again, obviously you don't take price, but those packages include somebody who is just starting out, somebody who has a few different employees underneath them. Like, what's the best kind of client for you?
The best kind of client is the one that gets it.
Yeah.
So they understand what they're doing with their marketing. Now they don't have to understand all the nuts and bolts. That's what we're there for. Yeah. But they understand a little bit with where they want to go. They understand where they want to get ROI from, not just going, I want to get sales, but they understand what
meetings, like
meetings and other things, and there's a progression for any sales funnel. It doesn't matter how you have it set up, but they understand that part. So we've worked with everything from the restaurant up the street from us to large giant pharmaceutical companies and everything in between. And it's been interesting there because it's all been based on referrals and networking at the very beginning. And now we're in our 3rd, 4th generation type referrals, which is really nice as a business owner. So you can see it because you can rely on your work. You don't necessarily are just sending out ads and hoping cold people are coming in all the time. You can rely on your work and your name, and that's how Rich and I have built everything because, like we said earlier, about the transparency.
And the transparency, but I think people find that you're genuine enough. You have the background, you have the I mean.
That's always the goal, especially in marketing.
Yeah, and plus, you guys talk what you preach. I mean, you do what you preach.
Right.
You talk about it. You have the nuts and bolts, and then you just do it. Like do you guys coach by any chance? Like
we do from time to time for small business owners. We are actually putting together a couple of online things so that we can have it recorded and people can access it. Right. So we've done some of those things in the past, and we're trying to not cater to it, but have something there for everybody almost.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. All right, so networking, because that's what we're here for.
Right.
So networking, so for you in general, since the majority of your business comes from referrals, how have you built those relationships? What can you attest to the success of those referrals? Where are they coming from? How are you continuing to maintain those relationships? And what can you provide as far as knowledge for that?
So like I said, and I know you know this, but I started 20 years ago as a headhunter. So,
I forgot. Yes,
right.
I remember now.
So as a recruiter, so I was out 6 times a week, breakfast, lunch, dinner. So like 18 to 20 events a lot of times, and even Saturdays where we had a random event every once in a while. So I did that for a long time, probably about 5 years at that pace. And I met everybody. I went to every event, large, small, paid, unpaid, whatever, in that niche that I was in. And then it expanded a little thing with the advent of like LinkedIn, and that's how I got into social media. But with all that and the referrals, it's important to show your face, I think, and have the meeting with somebody, even if they're not business, related right away.
Right.
They can introduce you to somebody.
Right.
And we try and do that as best as possible. As we've grown, we attend different events. I just spent a week out in Southern California at different craft beer events, which we do, and then craft beer is one of the industries that we're in, but then also networking with other business owners and other small business owners. So combining the two at times. Next week we'll be at very industry specific. Actually, one of the events that I hired you first to help us out with. Yep.
Good.
So we'll be back in State College for the Brewers of PA. So once you have a broad network, and that's been a lot of like the initial referrals when we started out. Rich was also a headhunter, so we had a huge group of people to pull from, but it all came from sweat equity, I guess, a long time ago. And now we pick and choose which ones we want to be there. So we mix in some general ones every once in a while, and then we go into industry specific ones.
And so what would you think the top 3 things you could tell people, because you've been doing this longer than I have, as far as going to 6 or 7 events a day. I had 4 yesterday and I wanted to die.
Yeah.
Okay, I was exhausted.
I remember those days.
Whew, but it's good because you have to get your face out there and it's necessary. That hustle is necessary. So what do you think the best thing you can do when you meet somebody new, and the worst thing you can do when you meet somebody new? And I'm just saying, when you go to a networking event, it's specific, you've done your due diligence, but like maybe top 3 things on both sides. If you can think of
the
it.
number one best thing you can do is listen.
Yeah.
All right. So it's hard at a networking event because everybody wants to talk, right? It's like, oh, hey, I'm Ashley. Hey, I'm Marty. And then there's like, that's it. You're trying to talk over top. So listen to the person a little bit. And if you can learn that skill where you just take that first 10 seconds to be like, okay, this is Ashley Owens and what does she do? And you start to put that in your brain. So then when the second thing comes, which is ask questions, you want to be able to go, so Ashley, not so, hey, what's your name as your second question again? So you can then have a better conversation. And the third thing, I think is the best thing, is to leave with some sort of value, not just your business card. Saying, you know what, if you need something on social media, I don't normally do this, but when I come to networking events, here's my card, feel free to shoot me an email. I'll send you just some information on what you were just talking about, how to build your audience and things like that. We have a great blog post that we did, last month, and I'll send that over. So you leave with something, and then you also have a reason to contact them back. And then it's 3A, which is always follow up the next day. The worst things you can do is just be like, hey, my name is Marty McDonald, I have a bad Rhino, and I'm like, and just, vomit on somebody instead of taking that pause to understand that you're trying to have a relationship. The second worst thing is only talk about business. It's like, okay, you're in Philadelphia. Oh, do you live in Philadelphia? Just simple questions. Not just talk about, well, that's a fuzzy line, because that was the third thing that I was going to say, is that, following up on number 2, where you're asking personal, is remember, you want to create a friend, but you're there in a business purpose.
Right.
So sometimes it gets way too friendly, and you're like, okay, you're monopolizing somebody's time because you feel like you've hit it off as a business friend, and you kind of like stick to them. Remember that you're there to network, so you want to meet multiple people. And I think that's the worst thing, is those 3 things.
Is the too personal. You can, so making a friend is more of taking the pressure off of just doing business, but you're right. There's a gray area, but there's a, don't make a best friend.
Right, for the night, type of thing, where you just hang out with one person all the time.
You can't. And no, I love that you clarified that, because that's awesome. So who's a good strategic partner for you? So the way I define strategic partners are industries that are complementary to your field. So companies that you partner up with that you can share clients with, and who would those people be good? Who would those people be for you?
Yeah, so we partnered up with quite a few. We have our main partners, but we also have a lot of other relationships with other digital agencies that don't provide the level of social that we do.
Gotcha.
So that's been a big thing, and we're always willing to talk to them because we can add on something that can help them, and they realize that, and that's been one area that have been a great strategic partner. The other one is just what I mentioned before. We do a lot of work in craft beer, and in that industry we've also worked with a lot of restaurants.
Oh, okay.
So anybody that services them, we always find that bars, restaurants, and in the craft beer industry, they're looking for some guidance. They may not look to hire us, but they're looking for some guidance, and we're always looking to network in those areas.
I've got somebody for you. Her name's Brianna, she's awesome. But she does POS systems.
Yeah.
Yeah. She worked a lot with companies like that.
Sure.
Ooh, I like her. Yeah, she'll give you an intro before I leave today. But so what has been the most, when it comes to people digesting content, and I
Sure.
was talking about networking, but this is actually it's important to know, especially as people are growing their own brands, because that's a form of networking.
Yep.
You're providing yourself
Very
to the
much
world.
so.
What is the most consistent way of maintaining your message?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might
So-
be a high level question, but
No, it's actually a really good question. So first start off with whatever you're comfortable with. If you're comfortable with turning a camera on and shooting a video, then do that. If you're not quite there, then start with what you're most comfortable with. Some people are like, oh, but my writing is horrible. Well, you'll get better at it as you do it. You don't need, War and Peace, a giant, multi-thousand-page, piece of content. You need something with 4 or 5 bullet points that speaks to you and your brand, and maybe 300 total words. Once you get in the habit of that, that can work out for you. But I always tell everybody, start with where you're most comfortable. There's services out there that will put you on podcasts. There's services out there that will put you on video things like this. Seek them out and find out what you're most comfortable with. The key for content is to have your own little personal piece to it, but then also have it so that it's effortless. So if writing is a chore, don't do writing, but hey, I can speak. So I can talk what I want, have it transcribed, and then now I have my blog post because it's easier for me to edit. Just go with what comes natural to you and then evolve that as you go along. And once you have money to put behind it, or a little bit at the beginning, you can get a little bit more advanced in your content.
So where do you find it to be, and I'm phrasing this question, I'm having a tough time phrasing the question because
Sure.
Where do you find what you do in your business to be the most challenging? Like
What I do?
I mean, where do you find success? Like if you could have a client, what does success in your industry mean to you? Mean for you?
Sure. So I'll go back to the original thing with transparency and being able to work with them and making them, not making them isn't the right term, but having them see a result and having them understand where that came from.
Okay.
Now, I will tell you this, we have clients that have been with us for 4 years plus where they still don't necessarily understand, but they're happy because they get the results, and that's okay too, but you're always able to explain it. So I feel the most successful when you have a client come back and go, wow, we just won a $50,000 project and they came in via social.
Oh, wow.
And that's like, okay, we get it. How can we do more?
Right.
So you get them to ask that question, but we always want to be transparent in what we're doing, and then we want to educate the client throughout so that they understand the whole digital marketing wheel and how that maybe turns into their direct mail and their other pieces of marketing that they've been doing, and understand where they're getting results. And that to me is like one of the biggest successes that I can speak of, is when a client comes back and goes, okay, what can we do more of this?
What books would
or how?
So going off of that though, what resources do you use to
Sure.
maintain that level of subject matter expertise?
Oh man, it's like thousands.
Yeah, I know you're a big reader, but
It's tons of podcasts now.
Okay, so which ones?
So I don't really mention
Oh,
which ones.
okay,
Because
it's
then
super
it's
secret?
just like, no, it's not super secret, but go out and you can see there's a host of them. Go with recent ones, don't go with ones that are a year or two old. But the reason I don't mention them is that somebody had came up to me about 2 years ago because of a book I mentioned, and they said, well, this is like out of date. And I'm like, well, the context of everything in there is 100% still true. Marketing hasn't changed, it's just the vehicles that go out. So I rely a lot on old school direct marketing. So I find, direct marketing is just hits you over the head. and translated that into social
Yeah.
and taken that slant to it, and it's worked out really well. So like Dan Kennedy is a huge, like, he's never been an official mentor of mine, but a huge thing. Ben Settle, which is from email marketing, is totally different type of marketing. He's somebody, but you know, that you want to do and check out just from an email standpoint. So those two I feel comfortable mentioning because it's a very similar path. On social, to keep up to date, it's just constantly following through probably about 50 on a rotation.
Wow.
And you get little pieces. I also just try and follow what Facebook and Instagram do as a public company to kind of keep up with trends and also understand where their revenue is coming from so that we can advise, you know, how we're going to spend the advertising dollars, because that's actually a very neat way to do that.
Oh, that's brilliant. Oh my gosh. So, so Marty, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
But I want people to know how to find you. So please look into that
Sure.
camera and tell people, everybody, how they can find you, how to contact you.
Absolutely. So our website is Bad Rhino Inc. So BADRHINOINC.com. You can reach us there. I always do this. You know, there's info at Bad Rhino Inc. If you mentioned that I was on this show and you had a specific question off of something I said, feel free to shoot an email and somebody real will respond to you.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Connect to Success with me, Ashley Owens, on Thursdays on RVNTV. Stay tuned every week on Thursdays where I talk to power connectors in the Philadelphia and South Jersey area. Stay tuned next week. Thanks so much.